Hello everyone, welcome to a lesson with Maria's Lytics. Today we are going to discuss a very famous poem by the American poet Emily Dickinson, and the title of the poem is I Heard a Fly Buzz When I Died, and this is part of the poetry section in the paper Women's Writing for students of IGNOU University in the BA English Literature program. So let's move on to a discussion about the poet. And Emily Dickinson was born in the year 1830 in a place named Amherst, which is in Massachusetts, America. So she's a very interesting writer, and from her early life itself, she wanted to sit alone, and she was a very lonely person. So in her late 20s, when she became 20 years and so, she began to show the habit of sitting alone and lonely, and she didn't want to meet any visitors. So because of this tendency, the people in her place called her an eccentric person, a mad person. But she had got educated when there was a school named Amherst School in her place. She got educated, and then she was sent to a seminary to become a priestess or a nun. But she quit the institution because it was very tough and strict over there. And later she got educated, and she was a learned lady and intellectual. She was an artist. She was a poet. And she used to do all the chores or work at home, but she began to spend time so much for reading and writing, and she became a poet. And she sent a lot of letters to people who were very famous at that time, to writers, poets, and public persons who are involved in politics, etc. So she had a lot of people's connections with through letters with other people, and they began to train her and help her edit her poems and evolve to become a good poet. So she found deep connection through her letter writing, and later on she began to wear white clothes, and she loved whites, and people began to call her woman in white. So she was a deeply religious person, and later on she began to study religion on her own, and she developed her own sort of religion, and she didn't go to church and all, but she was very religious. So she wrote more than 1000 poems, 1800 poems during her lifetime, but she didn't publish much. Only 10 poems were published during her lifetime, that too anonymously, because at that time women were not doing any job, women were not allowed to publish, nobody will read women writers and all. It is during her lifetime that people like George Eliot, Jane Austen, and such writers began to publish. So she had a distinctive lifestyle, and in her poems we can see that she uses capital letters in between. In between there will come dashes and columns, etc. There will be big capital letters, there will be slant rhymes, and she uses complex metaphors in her language. So her language is very simple, but there are some special uses in her poems. And coming to the major themes that she discusses, death and mortality is an important theme in her works. She always talk about death, and human beings have a very short lifespan in this earth in that manner. And then she also talk about love, desire, nature, then immortality, religious doubt. She thinks a lot about religion and the way it works in the world. So she also thinks about the inner thoughts, what is happening in people's mind, what are the feelings that people have, and all those things she include in her writings. She also wrote about women issues, the political issues of that time, etc. But it was only after her death that when her sister Lavinia discovered her poems, some of her poems she had given to Lavinia and asked her to burn it. But Lavinia could not burn those things, and instead she got it published. That is how we get her poems. So her posthumously, that means after her death, her poems are published in 1890. So she's now recognized as one of America's greatest and most original poets. She has written that much number of poems, and so she became a very famous writer. Now let's go to the poem. And her poems do not have special titles. Usually the first line of her poems are considered to be the titles of those poems. So this poem, I Heard a Fly Buzz, is included as one among them. So let's go to the line by line description of the poem. The first lines are given in red letters in the slides, and also notes are given in the slides. So I heard a fly buzz when I died. The stillness in the room was like the stillness in the air between the heaves of storm. So this is the opening lines of the poem, and this line itself establishes the central paradox of the poem. So the speaker who is narrating one's own death. So here we are seeing a person describing about his or her own death. So the poem is number 465. In her collection, this poem appears as the number 465. So the speaker is talking about her own death. So a fly is coming in between, a buzzing fly. Buzzing is the sound that the housefly makes, and so a housefly, a small insect, is coming and it intrudes upon what is this person feeling. A person is dying and is waiting to see God and go to the eternal life, but in between a very trivial, a very small insect like a fly is coming in between and irritating this person. So that is the theme of the poem. So Dickinson creates a powerful atmospheric contrast between the fly's movement and the profound stillness in the room. So something very big, a death is happening in a family, but in between a fly is coming and it is disturbing the person who is dying. Okay, so the comparison to the stillness between the heaves of storm suggests this is a moment of suspended time. So here the person who is dying is hearing the buzz of a fly, and it is contrasted with the stillness in the room because a death is happening. So everybody is silent and worried. So a buzz sound is coming. So it was like the stillness in the air between the heaves of storm. Something very big is coming. Heaving means, letting out the breath. So it is like sighing. So between this sigh and worries of all those people who are there in the room of death, a fly is coming and is irritating the person who is dying. So the suspended time is disturbed through this sound of this insect. Okay, so an eerie, a disturbing calm of the eerie calm in the eye of a hurricane. It is how it is described. So a very big incident, something very big is happening, it's a death, but a small fly is coming in between. So this is a meteorological metaphor. This emphasizes the tension of the moment. Death has neither fully arrived nor has it passed. So this is an in-between moment where a person is going to die. He has not died completely, but it is this in-between time. So in the first stanza, Dickinson establishes a powerful contrast between stillness and motion. So death is there, at the same time the moving insect is there. So the phrase between the heaves of storm suggests we are in a moment of suspended animation, the calm between life and death. So this is a liminal space between life and death, motion and complete stillness and coldness of death, we can say. So in the second stanza, the lines goes like this: the eyes around had wrung them dry, and breaths were gathering firm for the last onset when the king be witnessed in the room. So all these people who are there around this person who is dying, they had been crying for a long time. So their eyes have become dried. Wrung them dry means, like all the water has gone from their eyes, and breaths were gathering firm. Now after a long time of worry and tension and pain, now they are attaining a sort of, a stillness, a firmness. So they are sure that death will happen. So they are taking it for granted. Anyway, death is happening. So they are waiting for the last onset. So at last, after a long time, this person is going to die. The last onset means something big is going to come. So all these people, mourners means all these people who have gathered around this deathbed. A person is lying in his deathbed, so there are a lot of people. They are the mourners. So they have cried, they have exhausted, they have tired from crying, and the mourners are holding their breath in anticipation or hoping to witness this last moment of death. So this is traditionally interpreted as either god of death is coming. So here god of death is personified. So a sense of collective anticipation for a grand spiritual moment, a big happening is going to come. So the capitalization of the king, K is given in capital letters, room is given in capital letters, and in between there are this hyphen. So these are all the particular ways in which Dickinson writes to make to make it a big event, like a K is in capitals. So the second stanza shifts to the observers, the eyes around, and how they are witnessing this death event. These people who have gathered here have cried a lot. And now the third stanza, I willed my keepsake sign away, what portion of me be assignable, and then it was there interposed a fly. So this is a person who have been waiting for death. He or she knew that death is coming. So she has given everything of her own to others. Will means the paper in which you write down everything that you have for other people. So you are giving away whatever keepsakes, whatever property and everything you have is signed away, is given to other people. What portion of me be assignable? So that means there are some portions of the dying person that cannot be assigned to anyone, like one's body or one's own memories. These things cannot be given to another person. Only this, practical things, concrete things can be given away to others. That is indicated there. So what portions of me be assignable? And then then all on a sudden, something is happening. That is, there interposed a fly. A house fly, a very trivial, small insect is coming, and it is disturbing. So this material possessions are indicated by this word, what portion of me be assignable, what can be given, I have given away. So the fly is, intruding into this great moment. So a thing that is very mundane, very practical thing is interfering into a very big event like death. So the earthly matters, so the speaker is giving away his possessions, but the memory and the good things that one has done and the experiences cannot be taken away. So that is what is indicated here. Now the final stanza, with blue, it's about the fly. With blue, uncertain stumbling buzz between the light and me, and then the windows failed, and then I could not see. So these are the last moments. So the speaker is saying that this fly, its color is blue. So it describes this last moments of this person's consciousness. Consciousness means the moment when you have, a sense of reason, you can see and understand things. So this is the last moment. So the fly's blue color is noted by the speaker, and this is also indicative of something else. We'll go into that. So the stumbling buzz, the sound suggests both the physical color of the insect and the speaker's failing perception. The last moment before you die, what do you feel? So this fly is coming in between. So the fly positions itself between the light and me. So after death, you are going to the God. That sense is there, that meaning is there. So the light indicates the eternal light. So once you die, you are going to join this godly light. So this fly is coming in between. So this possibly representing an obstruction or stop between the dying person and heavenly light or spiritual transition. So this repeated phrase, and then it comes, and then it creates a sense of deteriorating awareness. So the person is losing his memory, sense, consciousness, everything. In the last moment before you close your eyes, you are losing the sense between the world. So, and then I could not see to see. Then what happened, I do not know, because my eyes got closed. In the last moment of death, The windows failed. In other poems of Emily Dickinson also, she uses this word window. Window is indicating the eyelids of the person who is dying. So the person can no more see. So this last line works on multiple levels. So both the physical blindness and the spiritual uncertainty. Before you die, you believe that you are going to reach to the eternal light or you are going to join God. But you don't know what is going to happen, because what happens after death to the soul and to the body, nobody knows. The speaker, the person cannot know about that. So this inability to comprehend our own experience. So the moment you die, you do not understand what is happening. So the final stanza brings a central disruption, that is the fly. The blue uncertain stumbling buzz interrupts. So a very trivial thing like a fly is objecting the person from reaching God or to clearly see her own final moments. The repeated use of and then is again and again coming. So, and then I could not see. This is the loss of one's senses. Now, going to a deeper meaning, we can see that the poem challenges the traditional religious views of death as a moment of spiritual triumph. Usually, death is shown as your attainment of oneness with God. You're going to reach God, but that is challenged here. Instead of the divine presence, we get a small insect like the fly. A fly is indicative of decay and decomposition. We always associate or connect a fly with the lack of neatness, and it is a symbol of dirtiness. So decay and decomposition. So a fly is brought here in this last great moment. So the speaker's final inability to see suggests both physical and spiritual blindness. So this fly's appearance and it coming in between this light and the person, and it shows the physical and spiritual blindness, and it raises questions about what is happening after death, this uncertainty, not knowing what happens after death. Then blue is the blue light of the candle that symbolizes an omen of death or the presence of the devil. Blue is always associated with the uncertain and sometimes with the devil and all. So this is symbolic. That blue color itself is symbolic of death. So this fly intervenes and comes in between the light and the dying person, blocking this physical sight of this appearance of God or the king. So the fly becomes a powerful symbol of mortality's unglamorous reality. Usually when we report death, we say that he has attained oneness with God and all, but death's unglamorous reality of death is shown here, while the mourners, all the people who are crying, await a grand spiritual moment. Nature intrudes in its most ordinary and unsettling form. So all those people who have gathered around the dying body is waiting for this last moment of death, the last breath. But for the person who is dying, a fly is coming in between. So this is a juxtaposition or bringing together two opposite things. The sublime, that means the very big idea of death, and the mundane. Mundane means the very practical, silly things. So death and a fly is brought together and juxtaposed. So the central irony lies in how a common housefly disrupts or stops what should be a solemn, very, very big moment of the speaker's death. And now coming to the title, I Heard a Fly Buzz When I Died is on the 465th number in that collection. So this presents a striking paradox. A speaker who is narrating their own death. If you are able to narrate your own death. So this is the standard Johnson numbering of Dickinson's poems. So a careful progression, a careful evolution of these stanzas show how Dickinson moves from external. That means the room's atmosphere is described earlier. Then the discussion go to the mourners. They are the social, members of that moment, in that moment, and the personal. That means the will. There is a description about what the person is giving away to others and all. And then there is this deeply internal feelings of the person who's dying. So there is this space called the room's atmosphere, and then there are these mourners or the society around, and there is this will that the person gives away to others, and then there are these internal feelings of the person who is dying. So each stanza adds a layer of meaning to our understanding of the death scene. All these things are involved in a death scene. While presenting, death is not presented as a very grand thing, and in between a very practical, mundane, trivial thing is interfering. And coming to the structure and form, the poem consists of 4 quatrains, 4-lined quatrains following Dickinson's preferred ballad meter. This is a usual meter that mostly Dickinson uses. This is ballad meter, and it alternates between iambic tetrameter and iambic trimeter. So, however, she disrupts this traditional form with her signature dashes. All the time you get dashes, ellipses, and this columns, etc. In between she uses capital letters, sometimes small letters. So her own kind of diction is used, or way of writing is used to indicate this interruption and discontinuity. So in between somebody is interrupting, so that is indicated through this hyphens and all. Now coming to the historical context in which Dickinson wrote, and as I said earlier, she wrote almost about all the things that happened during that time. So it was a time when there was a war, the Mexican-American War, then the California Gold Rush, then she witnessed the first American Women's Rights Convention. It is at that time in 1848, the first Women Convention happened for women's rights. And then there is this Harriet Tubman, this lady who helped slaves to escape from slavery. Her name was Harriet Tubman. So she was living in a very complex historical time, and she wrote during the Civil War era. And in her own family, she lost so many persons to death. Her mother died, her father died, and then, as I said earlier, there were a lot of persons to whom she wrote letters, very famous politicians and writers, and many of them died. So death was a constant theme that worried her. That is why she wrote about death. And she also brought about some controversial elements, like her rebellion to the standard religion. I told you that she used to practice religion in her own way. She didn't follow the church, and she didn't always go to the church and all. So she had a rebellious spirit, and that was the habit of transcendental group of writers. Transcendental writers are a group of writers who wrote during her lifetime, and Emerson was one famous transcendental poet. So in her poems also we can see that this rebellion against religion, against women's position, etc. So her poetry attempts to seek eternal truth in a natural world with the power of human consciousness. So all the time she goes to this inner thoughts of a person, what is happening in the thought of a person, and she questions religious doctrines. And in the current poem, in this poem, she creates a powerful statement about the nature of death and human expectations after life. After death, we have a lot of expectations, and we have a lot of doubts also about death. So this, possibility of whatever can happen after the death, and you don't know what is going to happen, this feeling is brought in the poem. And now coming to the literary devices, she employs several techniques in her poems. One is synecdoche, the eyes around representing the mourners. Synecdoche means the people are not clearly described. The mourners, those people who are sitting around the deathbed, are not clearly described. Only their eyes are described. But these eyes stands for the people who are there. Only parts are described to indicate. That is what is meant by synecdoche. So eyes around means there are people who are sitting around her. Then alliteration is used. Alliteration means same letters are repeated. Blue, buzz, b is repeated. And then caesuras, created by her characteristic dashes, forcing pauses in reading. She's not writing in complete sentences. She, just indicate small phrases, and in between there are these hyphens, colons, etc. In between there are these capital letters. This is called the stops in between, this dashes in between, this pausing is called caesuras. Then paradox. Here the paradox is that the person who is dying is describing one story. It's quite unusual. It don't happen all the time. It doesn't happen. So there is this paradox, and a buzzing fly is coming in between in the moment of death. This is the paradox. Then this color symbolism is used. The blue of the fly suggests both decay and uncertainty. So blue is indicative of the decaying body and all, and the uncertainty of not knowing what is going to happen next. So that's all for this lesson. Thank you so much.